Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's great to see you. This is a general collective reading. There are no signs attached to it, so only take it if it resonates for you within the first couple of minutes. Always use your discernment. So, just as I was getting the cards out for this reading, I was getting this download about like somebody has just received like a huge amount of information is how it's coming through about perhaps like a new, I don't want to say chapter, it feels like a new book or many books is how it was coming through, like has received like just like a lot of new information about perhaps what's ahead that I feel like actually had been held back for whatever reason. That's going to vary for everyone, but it's kind of like opening up the first page. That's how it's feeling. So we're gonna get started. What is your overall energy? The Worrier, it says, I can handle whatever life brings to me. That's very interesting because I do feel that there is kind of like perhaps a bit of an overwhelm. It could be that, or just like having concerns about whatever it is that is going to unfold next. And it says, I can handle whatever life brings to me. I feel like there's also a message in there about like the universe never gives you anything that you can't handle. And I feel like they are also giving you sort of like a test run of something. Almost to like get you acquainted with something, and it could even be multiple sort of test runs or like practice runs kind of thing. That's how it's feeling. And it's kind of like each time you go through some sort of process, like it gets easier and easier, right? So it's kind of coming through like that. So you may be even experiencing things where it's like perhaps like the same energy underlying, but it happens sort of in different circumstances, right? Like slightly different circumstances or slightly different people that it plays out with. Or like even perhaps your perspective within a certain dynamic might shift depending on the situation, if that makes sense. It's almost like the universe is giving you multiple perspectives of something that perhaps you're trying to create. Like it's kind of like if you're like creating like an artwork, for example, right? Like a sculpture, you got to see it from every angle. That's sort of how it's coming through. Especially with this one, it looks like a sculpture or something. And there's a star. It is kind of coming through the star energy. But the Worrier, like there's perhaps something about like yeah, it feels like just like there's concerns about something. Okay, what are you being asked to shift into? The Communicator. I remember that my words can have multiple meanings. Interesting. Okay, and then you have here the warrior at the bottom of the deck. I ask for what I want because I deserve to get what I want. So maybe you're being asked to, with the communicator, like ask for something that you want or communicate some sort of desire, whatever that is. The star card to me often sometimes talks to me about like being vulnerable as well. Well, it's not quite that in terms of like relationship, that kind of thing. It's more so like sort of doing something without self-consciousness or without worry about who might be witnessing you, if that makes sense. That's sort of how it comes through with the warrior card. The communicator though, so this is bringing in Gemini energy. I remember that my words can have multiple meanings. That's also coming through with sort of like the different perspectives as well. Like seeing something from a different perspective, perhaps than you normally do. It's like, okay, it's kind of coming through like perhaps maybe normally in any sort of situation you perhaps go in with a certain perspective of like, this is the role that I'm going to play. And it's almost like wanting you to almost like take the opposite perspective. Like, what if you were the other? What if you were what if you were the other? I feel like I'm not describing that properly, but we're just gonna get more cards. Hold on. So it's kind of like perhaps like if you approach a situation in a particular mindset, it's kind of like there's a suggestion to flip that perspective the other way, perhaps to see yourself in a different light. The warrior's coming out with the dragonfly. That talks about the mind. I feel like dragonflies have just been so much more active this summer. I've just been seeing a lot of them. More so than I normally do. Master of light, illusion, and the mind. The dragonfly is an ancient and ethereal creature that awakens a sense of wonder and awe. The dragonfly is a symbol of the mind, as it is always moving, shifting, shimmering, and changing. When the dragonfly card appears, it's worth considering the quality of your mind and perception. Are they restless or still, dreamlike or crystal clear? The situation at hand may be different than it appears at first glance. The dragonfly reminds us to calm the mind so the light of wisdom can shine through. Yeah, so it feels like there's perhaps a perception, or the mind is worried, is how it's coming through, about something. So practicing sort of like calming the mind, because I feel like there is some sort of like new perspective that wants to come in about your role. It's so interesting. Okay, so that download about like the many books that were coming in, they were all in sort of like the similar range of colors, was how I was seeing it. It felt very much like physical manifestation oriented, like creating something sort of like physically that required like a large amount of information. but the core of sort of what I was seeing was that like the core, or like I don't know how else to describe it, but like the core. Okay, it's kind of like, so I watch a lot of superhero movies, so it's coming through with Iron Man. If you've seen Iron Man, this is the first one, where it's like he has this like core energy generator, right? That lives right here. And it's kind of like when he had limited resources, he created this core that functioned in order to get him out of a tough situation, right? But then once he got out of there, that core started to malfunction because it wasn't made with the best materials and all that. So once he was out, he was able to create a new core, right? So that's sort of how it's coming through here. Like, I feel like there's something about like the old core of, perhaps it was sort of like a core identity, or even like a feeling, or like perhaps emotional is how it's feeling to me. Could even have to do with like worrying, right? Like somebody who perhaps like did a lot of planning, or like had to think very deeply about sort of like making sure everything worked out and all of that. That might be part of the quote unquote core. And it's kind of like there's wanting to be sort of a shift in that way. Because the old core is not going to work in creating the new thing, if that makes sense. You need a more powerful core, is how it's feeling to me. Made from sort of like the new, the full resources that you have that are available to you, because it feels like perhaps the core from the over explaining, it will require, in order to rebuild this core, it will require all of the resources that you have available to you. Okay, I'm gonna leave it like that. Okay, the communicator being asked to shift into. Oh, the sea serpent. I love this card. Okay, so that's the new core, right? That's so interesting. That is so interesting. Okay, so you have all this blue energy. It was a blue core that I was seeing, actually. That could mean so many things. So obviously blue is an important color. It feels also like, so the sea serpent, which is interesting because this is the sacral chakra, which is, you know, typically characterized as being sort of orange, right? But this card comes through with blue because the sacral and the throat chakra are very much connected, right? If those two energy centers are not connected, then it's kind of like, even if you had creative ideas and things like that, they can't be expressed properly if the throat chakra is not in alignment with that. So it is coming through like that they are, especially with the communication, the communicator. So perhaps there's something about like what is being expressed that is needing to come into alignment with something, with what it is that you want to create as well. The sea serpent also talks about like flow to me, like there's, okay, let's read it, one sec. Healing emotional wounds and expressing desires. The sea serpent represents the energy of expression. Whether it's emotions, creativity, sensuality, or desire, the sea serpent helps us move and direct our energy into a healthy current. When the essence of this card is in balance, we express ourselves creatively and sexually without fear or shame. We know what we desire most. Our hearts are at ease, and our relationships are meaningful and enduring. We loosen the grip of self-judgment, and we let the cool waters of forgiveness in to heal our wounds. When the energy of the sea serpent is not yet activated, our emotions and creativity are left in the muddy waters. The current of expression stagnates in some areas of our lives, and in other places it floods. It's important to remember, no matter what the waters of our emotional lives look like, the sea serpent loves us just the same. Like a mother, she wraps herself around us in a gesture of protection. She supports us as we learn to express our true natures. So it is associated with water as well. You have the rabbit at the bottom of the deck, which is another worry card coming through. It talks to me more about being alert about something. That's really interesting. So you're building a new core. Perhaps has to do with the sacral or the throat chakra. Definitely communication and the mind are highlighted here, though. The comic, that's interesting. That's under the Worrier card. Yeah, it's too many. Okay, there's 4. Again, there's a lot of cards coming through here, and I'm just going to take them. So it says the Queen, the Box, the Healer, and the Temple. This comic card is giving me pause. It feels kind of like there's maybe like a fear of not being taken seriously is how it's coming through. Or perhaps somebody did not take you seriously in a previous sort of cycle is how that's feeling to me. Or perhaps just like it feels uncomfortable. It feels kind of like there's something about like simplicity. Perhaps there was perhaps like a wound or something like that came from somebody not taking you seriously is how it's coming through. Or like they perhaps like called you childish or like very simple is how it's feeling to me. Like it's feeling like the comic energy in the shadow is how it's feeling. Okay, the dead end at the bottom of the deck, yeah. it does kind of feel like there's, anyways, I'm gonna leave that there. So it kind of feels like that might be something that's causing worry, is how it's feeling with the comic. But what is really lovely here, you have the Queen. Being asked to shift into the Queen energy. Because I actually feel like there is like... how do I say this? You have overcome something. I actually feel like you're helping somebody else as well. Because it's kind of coming through with sort of like, perhaps you went through something where you alone knew the truth about something, or like you alone were perhaps witnessed something as well with the eyes in the comic, like perhaps like, because it sometimes looks to me like somebody wearing a mask. Ugh, okay, I can't look at that right now. It's coming through with sort of like perhaps like somebody wearing like a mask, but you could see that that was sort of untruthful, is how it's feeling to me. And it's also kind of coming through as being like, perhaps you were the only one who saw that for a long time, is how it's feeling. But with the communicator and the Queen here, it's kind of like there may actually be somebody else who also sees something that you knew to be true for a very long time, but perhaps you were doubting yourself, or like worrying about it, right? It's kind of like especially with the mind, the dragonfly, it might have like been something that you ruminated on for a long time. But it's kind of like there's somebody, it kind of feels like with the communicator, because there's two there, somebody who is sort of like coming in as sort of a healing energy, right? With the Queen, the box, we'll get back to the box, I feel like there's more there. The healer and the temple card, where it's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of coming through as being like they're the energy is healing, because it's kind of like somebody else sees the same thing that you saw in whatever this past situation was. So it's kind of like they are validating what you knew to be true. And also perhaps helping to lift you up. And perhaps the other is also doing that to you, for you as well, as like helping to lift you up, because it is talking about healing emotional wounds, right? It's like when you are seen by somebody, and it is a very healing experience, is how that's feeling to me. This temple card talks about sacredness, something sacred. It kind of feels like it's kind of looking like a high five, like a joining forces kind of energy. The box talks about expectations and rules. It also is coming through with kind of like perhaps there were like boxes that were placed around you, and it's sort of breaking through those. Breaking through perhaps the expectations of those around you, or It also doesn't have to be a negative thing as well, because it's kind of like I'm seeing this core here at the center, right? There's a core at the center that perhaps needs more, like you got to peel back the layers of it, like that are surrounding it, is kind of how it's coming through. You're being asked to shift into the queen energy. The warrior at the bottom of the deck, though, I feel like this is something that you had to fight for. What's it coming through with Iron Man? The first movie. Maybe it's time to rewatch that one. Yeah, okay, so here you have the Queen of Materials. So this is the Queen energy, right? I feel like you're being asked to shift into this Queen of Materials energy. So to me, this talks about creation, like you're creating something. Perhaps it's a vision of... It does come in with like a vision of self, right? Like perhaps how you see yourself. A self-portrait even. It could be something like you're creating a self-portrait. Or it doesn't have to be that. It's kind of coming through as being like something that you've accomplished is how it's feeling. Like you are coming off like larger than life, though, is how it's feeling to me. Okay, and then you have the Muse of Emotions. This is the King of Cups in this deck. And it does talk to me about partnership. This is all that flow energy, right? Like the flow and the communicator. All this water coming in. It does feel very healing. It also feels kind of like there's like an influx of energy coming into clear something out emotionally, perhaps. Doesn't have to be emotional, though. It could also just be because water can also represent creativity. So can fire, but this feels like flow. So it could be, it might not be inspiration, it might be flow. So it's like you're creating something and it just kind of like, there's a flow to that is how it's feeling. Perhaps you're creating with another, or there's sort of support from another, which sort of like amplifies some sort of creation. Queen of Voices. Well, there's two queens there, right? The Queen of Materials and the Queen of Voices. So these are the two collaborators, is how it's feeling to me. Interesting. It does feel like joining forces. Perhaps someone is worried about it though. What is the worry about this? So you have here the Death card. Sometimes I see this as sort of like an awakening energy, right? With all the cobwebs as well, it's kind of like there is sort of like a challenge in terms of having to like root through cobwebs. That's sort of how it's coming through, like perhaps having to like go into uncomfortable energies in order to perhaps there is also some sort of ending as well. Because I'm seeing two in here as well, like two images. You have this one down here, you have that one up there, you have two in the middle. It's feeling like someone's going through like some sort of significant ending that is removing all of the cobwebs, but which means that you have to go in and look for all the cobwebs, which could be sort of like an uncomfortable experience. Muse of inspiration. That's the King of Fire. So you have, or King of Wands. So you have definitely some sort of creative collaboration is how this is looking to me. Emotions are water and fire though, which is really interesting. It's because you have, okay, so one is sort of earth, the other is air, but together it's the water and the inspiration, which is really interesting. Water and fire. So it's like all four elements are represented here. Because you have, that's so interesting. So it could be each one has sort of like a specialty, or like they're the queen in that area of whatever it is. But together it becomes sort of this like creative flow and inspiration. And the Hanged Man. That's so interesting. This feels like a very balanced collaboration. Because it feels like, so I feel like for the Queen of Materials is going through some sort of ending where they're like sort of clearing out the cobwebs, and then the Queen of Voices is going through a shift in perspective. Perhaps receiving clarity or illumination about some sort of challenge that they've been facing. Okay, and then being asked to shift into. Okay, the Muse of Voices. So you have 3 out of the 4 muses here so far, and the Magician. Okay, so it's coming through as, so creating something, because together all 4 of the elements are represented here is how it's coming through. The muses to me talk about a challenge of some sort. So I feel like currently is going through sort of like water and fire are perhaps like learning how to like how to join forces perhaps might be sort of like the challenge, or like what's being worked on currently. And then it becomes sort of like how to express that here with all this like the blue and the orange. Like it does feel like moving into sort of like the expression part of it, because I feel like the connection has been established between these two energies. It's about moving into the expression part of it, like how it is expressed in whatever way that is. With the Magician, because it does feel like you're receiving a lot of information or a lot of downloads or a lot of energy, and then like putting it into like a visible form, whatever that is, but through all four of the elements, if that makes sense. So it could be air, water, fire, or earth. It has to be balanced, though, in all four of those elements. It kind of feels like every time you create something, it has to have each of the elements represented in some way, is how that feels to me. The Awakening card. That's so interesting. This is the core, right? The core that is shining outward. And the Four of Voices. Okay, so I do feel that there is some healing still that needs to happen, is how it's feeling. Because the healing card is out, right? And then you have Four Voices, which is also talking about healing. But this one also talks to me about vision as well. So perhaps healing a vision, or healing how you see something. Perhaps it could be like a vision that you had that is sort of like coming back to life through this healing process. It's being reawakened. Seven of Emotions. Okay, so I did a reading, I don't remember how long ago. I'll find it and I'll link it above, that talked about a dream being reawakened. And I feel like a lot of this, like a lot of these cards, or at least these are, I'm being reminded of it right now. So I feel like it has something to do with that, where there's like suddenly a lot of options is how it's feeling to me. Or like a lot of sort of things being awakened again. Perhaps there's a lot, and it's coming out, it's wanting to be placed under the Magician. It's like you receive a lot of information, and perhaps you might not know what to do with it, is kind of how it's coming through, because it's kind of like it's almost like you're being given like 7 different projects at once. For example, this is just an example because it's the 7 of Cups. Let's say you're being given like 7 different projects, or 7 different books, or 7 different topics to study or something like that. And it's kind of like you can't do everything all at once. And I also feel that it's not, the way that this is going to play out, it's not going to be like you focus on one project and you complete that. You focus on another project and you complete that. It feels like you start all 7 at once is how it's coming through. So it's kind of like there may be overwhelm in that way. But it's kind of like you do little by little on each project. And it might be that you don't even know what the project is that you're working on. You're just being given like little pieces or like puzzle pieces, one from each puzzle. And so all of the pieces that you are receiving might not even go together. It's like they go into separate puzzles, if that makes sense. So it's like you're being given like different pieces that you sort of have to put together. And that's why it's kind of coming through with like all of the elements have to be represented at the same time. Otherwise, it becomes unbalanced is how it's coming through. Or it's like, I'm just seeing sort of like it, in order for the momentum to move forward, all 4 elements or whatever, that's just how it's coming through, has to move forward together, if that makes sense. So if you're only focusing on 3 or only focusing on whatever, 1, it would the movement forward wouldn't happen, if that makes sense. But look at all of this, like the light shining, the spotlight. Seven of Voices. Interesting. There are some fears to work through. Or illusions, I should say. It's interesting though, because this one it's looking to me like in the Light Seers Tarot, the Justice card, where there's kind of like the light energy and the dark. So that's how it's coming through. It is sort of emphasizing like the balance between light and dark, and also the 4 elements, right? So that's sort of how it's feeling to me. Because you may also, at the beginning of the reading, I was talking about like how you get sort of test runs before the actual thing comes through, where it's kind of feeling to me like sometimes the test runs illuminate sort of the dark energies that are the balance to the light. So in order to get to the light, or the okay, yeah, let's just leave it like that. In order to get to the light, you need to work through the shadow elements of it first in order for it to be balanced. So same thing where it's like if you have all 4 elements represented, you also have to have the light and the dark that are integrated in order to move forward. If you're just focusing on one of those 2, there's not going to be movement. I feel like that's what that card's saying. And then you have 7 of Inspiration. So you have 777 and 3 of the Kings in this card, or in this reading. It is coming through like Because you have 7 of emotions and the 5 of materials. Someone is holding the door open for you. I feel like there is sort of an energy that's trying to show you the way, but it does feel kind of like there is discomfort about that, but because it does kind of feel like a wind current is how that looks to me sometimes and how it feels. It's kind of like you just have to go with the wind. You have to go where the wind blows. And the 8 of emotions. And the page of inspiration. Okay, so this 8 of emotions sometimes talks to me about a blind spot, or that it's kind of like you're going in a direction, you're being pulled in a direction, but you don't know why, or you can't see clearly what it is that you're moving towards. And this page of inspiration is kind of coming through as being like, if you try and see the big picture, you're not going to be able to see it. It's going to just be sort of like, it's almost like the big picture is too... I don't know. It's like it's too big. The big picture is too big. I don't know. Or it wouldn't make sense if the big picture was shown to you, because it's kind of like there's so much. Like, imagine trying to read like 7 textbooks in a day. Like, it's impossible. You can't process that amount of information that quickly is how it's coming through. So it's like with the page of inspiration, it's almost like you're going to be given piece by piece, right? Like 1 page at a time with the pages. And it is going to come through as being like inspiration, like perhaps receiving inspiration, or perhaps there's like you get a 1 clue again, or like 1 puzzle piece that sort of fits in one of the 7 books that you've just been given, but you got to figure out which one it is. It's kind of coming through like that. And it kind of feels like it's happening that way in order to make the experience more enjoyable for you, first of all, because imagine if you, again, were given 7 textbooks to study or to learn. It's like that is extremely overwhelming, a very daunting task, and would not be an enjoyable experience at all. But it's coming through as with the pages, the page of inspiration. It's like, here's 1 puzzle piece, and then you sort of work with that for a little bit, and then once you're done working with it, it's like you're given another piece. So it kind of feels like almost like a For some reason, I'm just gonna pause there. The color pink might be significant to you. Okay. 6 of inspiration. And the Chariot, which is another 7. More of the spotlight energy, right? This, to me, is emphasizing the solar plexus. It's not even feeling like, because the word I was getting stuck on was treasure hunt, but it's not that. It's not like that. It's, you're going to be given the pieces. It's like you don't even have to move, is how it's feeling to me. It's just like or like you don't have to change what you've been doing. It's just kind of like it will be shown to you, almost like it's like in a spotlight, right? It's like it's going to stand out. Whatever it is that is the next step is how that's feeling. 3 of emotions at the bottom of the deck. It's like a mother maiden crone energy. Okay. The root card for this, for the overall energy, just to close this off. The challenge is unconscious patterns from your personal history may underlie the situation and need excavation. The gift is build roots of your own. Feel your spine extend like a deep taproot of a tree into the ground. Feel the strength of the earth pulsing up through you, holding you strong through any storm. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this was helpful. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.